Unlocking the Purim mystery and the Antichrist, the tyranny of evil. In today's society, as traditional values are gradually eroded, there is one profound question that we must consider. Could there be a spirit of Haman manipulating the modern world around us? The stories from the Bible, such as the tale of Esther and Haman, are not just ancient texts. They can serve as powerful mirrors, reflecting the challenges and issues we face today. In this video, we will delve into the mystery of Purim and uncover the striking connections between the spirit of Haman and the rise of the Antichrist in the modern world. Haman, an infamous villain in the book of Esther, was driven by unchecked pride, an insatiable thirst for power, and a desire for absolute control. His story, marked by his lust for domination, calls us to examine the forces at play in our own time. How much of Haman's spirit lingers in the world today? Could the tyranny he sought to impose on the Jewish people be reflected in the growing authoritarianism and the suppression of dissenting voices we see in modern society? In this video, we will explore the deeper meaning behind the festival of Purim, where evil seemed to triumph but was ultimately defeated. More importantly, we will examine the parallels between Haman's rise to power and the spirit of the Antichrist, a force that demands worship, silences opposition, and seeks to rewrite the moral fabric of society. As we dive into this exploration, we'll uncover how the spirit of Haman is alive today, not only in political powers, but in cultural movements, ideologies, and the rise of totalitarian regimes that seek to replace traditional values with a new order. Join us as we unlock the mystery of Purim, and in doing so, shed light on the modern-day spiritual battles that shape our world. Haman and the rise of power. Haman, the notorious villain in the book of Esther, is a symbol of greed for power and the insatiable desire for domination. Unlike most rulers who seek power for governance, Haman's ambitions extended far beyond that. He not only wanted authority, but also demanded that everyone worship him, forcing all to bow before him. This displays a clear manifestation of the evil spirit throughout history, characterized by pride and the quest for absolute control. Haman's story mirrors the behavior of some of the most infamous dictators in history, figures like Hitler, Stalin, and Saddam Hussein, who sought not only to rule but to obliterate anyone who opposed them. These leaders, much like Haman, were driven by unchecked pride, believing they had the right to dominate and control. Their regimes were marked by an oppressive thirst for power and a refusal to tolerate dissent. Just as Haman used his position to elevate himself and degrade others, these historical figures did the same, crushing opposition through force and fear. The more power they gained, the more they demanded that others bow to their will, much like Haman's command that everyone in his realm pay homage to him. Haman's hunger for power was not just political, but personal. He wanted to be worshipped and revered by all. In his rise to power, he ignored the importance of humility and compassion, values that are foundational to the moral compass of most societies. Instead, he personified the destructive nature of pride, which leads to a cycle of corruption, cruelty, and eventual downfall. This narrative serves as a chilling reminder of the dangers of unchecked authority and the lengths to which individuals in power will go to maintain their dominance. The spirit of Haman and the connection to the Antichrist. The spirit of Haman is not confined to the pages of ancient history. It has an undeniable parallel to the figure of the Antichrist, who will rise to power in the end times. Both Haman and the Antichrist share a common goal: to force everyone to worship them. Just as Haman sought to elevate himself above all others, the Antichrist will demand the worship of the world, positioning himself as a god. This is not merely a historical occurrence, but a spiritual battle that transcends time, manifesting itself in the modern world today. In the end times, as depicted in biblical prophecy, the Antichrist will seek to dismantle traditional values, especially religious ones, replacing them with new ideologies that push for conformity and obedience. We see this happening in the present day, where traditional beliefs, especially those tied to faith and morality, are being threatened and replaced by secular, materialistic views that demand allegiance. The rise of the Antichrist will be marked by the erosion of these fundamental values as he uses his power to control society, much like how Haman tried to reshape his kingdom. The spirit of Haman, seen in the actions of tyrants throughout history, mirrors the rise of authoritarian regimes today, where governments and movements demand submission to their new ideologies. In the face of this growing spiritual warfare, it becomes crucial to recognize the similarities between the oppressive tactics of Haman and the coming reign of the Antichrist, as both seek to erase the role of God and push humanity toward worshiping a false god of their own making. The spirit of Haman in the modern world. In today's world, we see that many nations and cultures are shifting away from respecting traditional values. The spirit of Haman, desiring to control and force everyone to conform, is clearly present in movements such as cancel culture and the growing demands for uniformity in society. Traditional moral values are being slowly discarded, and anyone who disagrees with the new set of values is systematically destroyed in one way or another. We see this unfolding in real-world examples, particularly in Western nations like the United States, where laws and regulations are increasingly pushing for a redefinition of social norms, especially around issues like gender and family. Religious organizations, particularly Christian communities, are being forced to act against their conscience. For instance, Christian doctors are being compelled to perform gender transition surgeries on children or participate in abortions, actions that directly contradict their beliefs. This mirrors the spirit of Haman in the modern age, the need for conformity and the persecution of those who refuse to comply. Just as Haman demanded that everyone bow to him, today's cultural and political pressures demand that individuals bow to new ideologies, often forcing people to compromise their deeply held values. In the name of progress, society is increasingly intolerant of those who resist, and those who stand firm in their beliefs are labeled as enemies to the greater good. The spirit of Haman thrives in these circumstances, using power to control and silence dissent. Practical example. In many parts of the world, governments and corporations are using their power to mandate that individuals and organizations conform to new moral and social standards. For example, in some schools, children are being taught to accept progressive views on gender without any room for alternative perspectives. Meanwhile, in the workplace, individuals who voice dissent against certain political or cultural ideologies risk losing their jobs or being socially ostracized. This growing culture of fear and forced compliance is a direct reflection of the spirit of Haman, where those in power seek to destroy any form of opposition. Haman and the tyranny of absolute power. Haman's story does not only highlight his desire for worship, it also reveals his drive to annihilate anyone who dares to oppose him. This insatiable need for power and control is a trait we've seen in history's most ruthless dictators. From the persecution of Christians in the Roman Empire to the brutal repression of those who defied Stalin and Hitler's regimes, the pattern is clear. The pursuit of absolute power always leads to the oppression and destruction of those who resist. Haman's desire was not only for recognition and worship, but also for the complete subjugation of anyone who refused to comply with his demands. His wrath was triggered by one simple refusal. Mordecai, a Jewish man, refused to bow to him. Haman's rage led him to plot the annihilation of an entire people, demonstrating the extent to which those who seek total control will go to eliminate any threat to their authority. This reflects the oppressive nature of totalitarian regimes, where any form of dissent is not only discouraged, but punished with severe consequences. This drive for absolute power can be seen throughout history, where regimes like Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union sought to crush any opposition. In those times, resistance often meant death or imprisonment. Similarly, in the case of Haman, and his wrath was so intense that it blinded him to any form of reason or compassion, leading him to take extreme actions against the Jewish people. The persecution of Mordecai and his refusal to bow was not just a personal affront to Haman, it was a challenge to his power and his authority. Just as Haman couldn't tolerate the mere act of defiance, tyrannical leaders in history have also eradicated those who stood against them, often for the sake of maintaining their dominance. The end and the message of hope. The story of Purim provides a powerful reminder that no matter how strong or dominant the forces of evil may seem, they are not invincible. Just as Haman's plot to annihilate the Jewish people ultimately failed, we can rest assured that evil schemes, whether on an individual level or a global scale, will always be thwarted by the hand of God. In the end times, even though the Antichrist will rise with great power and authority, God will step in to bring salvation and justice. The Bible assures us that even in the darkest of times, God's intervention will bring light, justice, and hope. History has shown us repeatedly that evil forces, no matter how entrenched or seemingly invincible, do not last forever. From the rise and fall of totalitarian regimes to the challenges faced by religious and political dissidents, we see that evil, though it may have its moments of power, eventually meets its end. It is through persistent faith, endurance, and trust in God's timing that ultimate victory is achieved. One of the most profound examples of this is the story of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime. At the height of its power, Nazi Germany seemed unbeatable. Hitler, with his iron-fisted rule, believed he was destined to reshape the world according to his twisted ideology. But in the end, his reign was brought to an end, and the atrocities committed under his rule were exposed and condemned. The defeat of Nazi Germany stands as a testament to the truth that no amount of hatred or power can withstand the will of God. Similarly, the fall of the Soviet Union provides another powerful example. For decades, communism seemed unshakable, with the Soviet regime expanding its influence across the globe. Yet, despite its vast power, the system ultimately collapsed, revealing the inherent weakness of any regime built on oppression and fear. The courage of individuals who risked their lives to challenge the Soviet system serves as a reminder that even in the most oppressive environments, resistance to evil can bring about change. These real-world stories remind us of a profound principle. No matter how oppressive or seemingly powerful evil may appear, it will not endure forever. The spirit of Haman, which seeks to control and destroy, may still manipulate the modern world. But just as God intervened during Esther's time, He will step in once again to bring an end to all evil. Practical example: the collapse of the Soviet Union and the downfall of Nazi Germany are just two examples where powerful, seemingly invincible regimes were eventually defeated. These instances are not isolated, but represent a larger truth: that God's hand is always at work, even when we don't immediately see it. His justice and restoration come, often in unexpected ways, and ultimately, victory belongs to those who stand firm in their faith. Even in the darkest moments, when it feels as though evil has triumphed, it is not the end. God's plan for salvation and justice is unfolding, and His victory is assured. Key lessons. Despite the story of Mordecai in the book of Esther offers us powerful lessons that are still relevant in our lives today. Mordecai, faced with immense pressure, stood firm in his faith and convictions, refusing to bow to Haman's demands despite the consequences. His unwavering commitment to God serves as a beacon of hope and strength for all of us as we navigate the challenges of our own lives. The spirit of Haman, represented by control, manipulation, and the desire for absolute power, seeks to force us to abandon our values and submit to ideologies that are contrary to the truth. It is crucial that we learn from Mordecai's example and not let this evil spirit dominate our lives. One of the first lessons we learn from Mordecai is the importance of standing firm in our beliefs, even when the pressure to conform is overwhelming. Mordecai refused to bow down to Haman, even though doing so would have spared him from danger. In the same way, we may find ourselves in situations where the world around us pressures us to compromise our values, whether in our workplaces, our social circles, or in the broader culture. The lesson here is clear. Standing firm in faith, even when it's not easy, will always lead to the ultimate reward. Mordecai's story also teaches us the importance of remaining steadfast in the face of fear and adversity. Throughout history, countless individuals have faced oppression, persecution, and even death for their faith and beliefs. From early Christian martyrs to those who resisted Nazi rule or communist oppression, the willingness to stand firm in the truth has always been a hallmark of those who are faithful to God. We must recognize that while evil may seem to have the upper hand at times, it is only temporary. God's ultimate plan will triumph, and those who stay true to His path will be victorious in the end. Another key lesson is the power of God's sovereignty. Mordecai trusted that God had a plan even when the odds seemed insurmountable. We must trust in God's sovereign will, knowing that His timing and intervention will always lead to justice. Just as God worked behind the scenes to orchestrate the salvation of His people in the book of Esther, He is working in our lives as well, even when we cannot see the immediate results. Moreover, Mordecai's story teaches us the importance of courage in the face of injustice. When Mordecai refused to bow to Haman, he was risking his life, yet he understood the greater purpose of his stand. Similarly, when we stand up for what is right, whether in our personal lives, communities, or the world, there may be personal sacrifices. However, the courage to uphold the truth is always worthwhile. It reminds us that we are not merely acting in our own strength, but in partnership with God, who empowers us to be courageous in the face of evil. Finally, Mordecai's example highlights the ultimate victory that comes to those who remain faithful and courageous. While it may seem that evil is winning in the world today, we can take comfort in knowing that, as in the time of Mordecai, God's intervention will bring an end to all injustice. His victory is assured, and for those who remain faithful to Him, that victory is theirs as well. As we reflect on these lessons, we are reminded that no matter how dark the world may seem, or how powerful the forces of evil may appear, God's plan is far greater, and His victory is guaranteed. Just as Mordecai's steadfast faith led to the salvation of his people, so too will our faith bring about God's victory in our lives. Conclusion. Chess. The story of Purim is not just a historical event. It serves as a wake-up call for us in today's world. The rise of Haman in the book of Esther provides a vivid reminder of how evil forces can appear to dominate, manipulate, and control. Yet despite Haman's attempt to impose his will and bring destruction to the Jewish people, his evil plot ultimately failed. This powerful narrative speaks to the enduring truth that no matter how much society changes or how high power might rise, those who remain steadfast in their faith in God will always overcome. In our modern world, the spirit of Haman is still present in the form of various forces, whether political, cultural, or ideological, that seek to impose conformity and suppress dissent. These forces may appear overwhelming at times, but we must remember that, just like in the story of Esther, evil will not have the final say. The rise of oppressive ideologies, the erosion of traditional values, and the spread of false beliefs may seem like powerful currents sweeping through society, but ultimately, they will not prevail. God's justice and righteousness are far more powerful, and His divine intervention will always bring victory over evil. The message of Purim is clear. No matter how dark the times may seem, or how powerful the forces of evil may appear, God's plan for us is one of victory. Just as Mordecai stood firm in his faith and refused to bow to Haman, we too must stand firm in our beliefs and have the courage to resist the pressures of modern society. In a world that constantly pushes us to conform to its values and ideals, we must remain anchored in our faith in God, knowing that He is our ultimate source of strength and salvation. Mordecai's example is a powerful reminder that standing firm in our faith does not mean we will not face challenges or opposition. On the contrary, we will undoubtedly face trials, doubts, and temptations along the way. But just as God delivered His people in Esther's time, He promises to deliver us as well. Our courage to remain true to our beliefs, even when the world around us is changing or becoming hostile, will be rewarded. The key lesson from Mordecai is that God works through those who trust in Him, and His justice will prevail, no matter how overwhelming the odds may seem. The victory of Purim is not merely about the survival of the Jewish people. It's a testament to the triumph of good over evil, of righteousness over wickedness, and of faithfulness over oppression. In our own lives, we too are called to remain faithful to God's teachings, even in the face of adversity. Whether in our personal struggles, our relationships, or our larger societal battles, the ultimate victory belongs to those who refuse to compromise their values and remain true to their faith. In the end, we can take comfort in knowing that no matter how powerful the forces of evil may be, they are always temporary. God's truth and justice are eternal. By walking the path of faith and righteousness, we are promised salvation and ultimate victory. As we face the challenges of our time, let us draw inspiration from the story of Purim and the courage of Mordecai, knowing that when we stand firm in our beliefs, we are on the side of victory, and God's divine intervention will lead us to triumph. What do you think of this perspective? How do you view the spirit of Haman in our society today? Do you believe that standing firm in faith can still lead to ultimate victory, even in the face of overwhelming opposition? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic.